The echo of barking filled the small-town animal shelter, a chorus of desperation and longing. Rows of kennels lined the hallway, each holding eyes full of stories. Some of hope, some of heartbreak. But in the very last kennel, huddled against the cold concrete wall, sat a dog that no one seemed to notice anymore. His name was Scout. Once, he had been full of energy and trust, a young German shepherd mix with shiny black and tan coat, and the kind of loyalty you could feel just by looking into his deep brown eyes. But life hadn't been kind to him. His previous family had left town one night and simply never came back for him. A neighbor found him wandering, ribs showing, formatted, and brought him to the shelter. That was 6 months ago. Since then, Scout had withdrawn into himself. He rarely barked. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't even lift his head when people passed by. Most visitors never gave him a second glance. He looked too broken, too defeated, until one Friday afternoon, when the shelter's front door creaked open. A man stepped inside, rain dripping from his coat. His name was David Miller. He wasn't there to adopt a dog. Not really. He had lost his own German shepherd, Ranger, over a year ago in a tragic car accident. Ranger had been his best friend, his protector, his family. After the loss, David couldn't bear to open his heart again. The pain was too much. But something had drawn him to the shelter that day. He couldn't explain it. A quiet tug in his chest, almost like fate whispering in his ear. The volunteer at the desk smiled kindly. Looking to adopt? David hesitated. Just looking. She led him down the hallway, pointing out puppies and energetic young dogs. They leapt at the bars, wagging and yipping for attention. But David's eyes kept drifting toward the back, where the kennels grew quieter. And then he saw him. Scout. The dog was curled in the corner, his body pressed so tightly against the wall it was as though he was trying to disappear. His fur was dull, his eyes hidden. Something cracked open inside David's chest. He stepped closer. "Hey, buddy." His voice was low, almost a whisper. And then it happened. Scout lifted his head, slowly, carefully. His eyes met David's, and in that instant, the years seemed to melt away. David froze. His breath caught in his throat. No, it can't be. Scout blinked, then scrambled to his feet. His tail twitched once, twice, and then began wagging furiously. He pressed his face against the bars, whining so loudly the other dogs stopped barking. David's heart pounded. His eyes blurred with tears. "Ranger," he whispered. It couldn't be possible. Ranger had disappeared after the accident. David had searched for weeks, plastering posters across town, calling every shelter, every vet. He never found him. Everyone said he must have run off, maybe even died from his injuries. David had mourned him, buried him in his heart. But here he was, alive. The shelter volunteer gasped. "Wait, you know this dog?" David fell to his knees in front of the kennel, pressing his forehead against the cold bars. Ranger, Scout, let out a heartbreaking cry, a mix between a howl and a sob, pawing frantically at the metal. "He's mine," David said hoarsely. He's my dog." The paperwork confirmed it. The old microchip buried beneath Ranger's fur still carried David's name. Somehow, after the accident, Ranger had survived, wandered far, and eventually been picked up as a stray. But by then, David had lost hope of ever seeing him again. The shelter staff, many of them in tears, quickly processed a reunion. And when the kennel door finally swung open, Ranger bolted forward and nearly knocked David flat, covered his face with desperate, slobbering kisses. David laughed and cried all at once, burying his hands in Ranger's fur. "I thought I lost you forever," he whispered. "But you found your way back to me." The shelter fell silent, every volunteer frozen, as they watched the miracle reunion. Even the other dogs seemed to sense it, tails wagging softly, whimpers rising, as if cheering for their friend. That night, David and Ranger walked out of the shelter side by side. The rain had stopped, and the clouds parted just enough for the moon to spill light across the parking lot. Ranger pressed against David's leg the whole way, unwilling to let even an inch of distance come between them again. And for the first time in years, David's heart fell whole. He whispered as they reached the truck, "Heroes don't always find us when we want them to." but they always find us when we need them most. Welcome home, Ranger.